International Air Transport Association, IATA, has predicted tough times for African airlines, saying airlines will go bust without support from governments in the form of bailouts. With 43 airlines across the world ceasing operations and 4 of them from Africa, financial relief for carriers is now more critical. Just last week, the Nigerian government announced that airlines in the country now have 4 billion naira as bailouts to be given to struggling carriers whose operations are affected by lack of funds to sustain them. How these bailouts will help the airlines in the country is our focus. Plus, domestic passengers and airports share how they're faring post the pandemic. A warm welcome to Aviation this week on Channels Television. I'm Bukola Jo Oketumbi.
The COVID-19 pandemic has no doubt had a significant impact on airline companies due to travel restrictions and a slump in demand among travelers. Several airlines have declared bankruptcy, with some ceasing operations, while other airlines reported historic reductions in flights. By October the 8th, 2020, 43 commercial airlines had gone bankrupt and many more were expected to follow. More recently, Norwegian Air is facing a battle for survival this winter. According to the airline, the country's government has declared that it will not provide additional financial support for the cash-strapped carrier.
That worked nice. Nice. That was a good moment.
Chief Executive Jacob Skram says the government's decision to reject the request for funds is disappointing.
There is no doubt that we are very disappointed. We showed that we were on the right track in February when we, for the first time in a long time, could point to a good net result for 2020, and we're looking forward to a good summer in terms of bookings.
The airline before now had grounded most of its fleet and earlier announced it will run out of cash in the first quarter of 2021. The company says it will try everything to get through the situation.
I have been clear all the way through our dialogue. When we received a loan of 3 billion Norwegian crowns from the state, that if the corona crisis would continue through the summer, then we will need more help. So it's no surprise that we would need it. I would also say that it is the government that has introduced the travel restrictions, which we of course abide by.
For Hong Kong's Cathay Pacific Airways, 5,900 job cuts and the end of its regional Cathay Dragon brand as part of cost-cutting plans did not go down with the staff. The airline has also sought changes in conditions in its contract with cabin crew and pilots as part of a restructuring that will cost $283.9 million. Overall, it has cut 8,500 positions, or 24% of its normal headcount, after receiving a $5 billion rescue package led by the Hong Kong government in June. The airline had been conducting a strategic review that analysts expected will result in major job losses. Away from Asia to Africa, where the statistics from the International Air Transport Association's boss, Alexandre de Juniac, is also grim. 4 African carriers have ceased operations and 2 are in administration. This includes South African Airways, which is on the brink of collapse, with government looking for a buyer. It has received state bailouts of almost $4 billion, but still has an outstanding debt of $613 million. In April, Air Mauritius was the first African airline to enter voluntary administration As a result of the crisis, while British Airways South African franchisee Comair filed for business rescue in May. The global airline body indicates that the region's traffic is down 89%, with revenue losses expected to reach $6 billion, and the consequences of the breakdown in connectivity are severe. 5 million African livelihoods are at risk, and aviation-supported gross domestic product could fall by as much as $37 billion. That's a 58% fall. Just last week, the Nigerian government hearkened to plea of stakeholders and airline operators by releasing 4 billion naira to struggling carriers whose operations are threatened by lack of funds to sustain their operations.
Not flying for 3 months plus 3.5 months, it was devastating because all of us were not making a penny in revenue, yet our costs continue. You must pay your insurance, it's in dollars. You must pay your aircraft lease costs, it's in dollars. You can negotiate all you want. They too are suffering because everybody in the world is trying to negotiate their payments. So it was a very, very rough period for everybody. Yes, coming back now is like we're in a different world from where we were before COVID-19, completely different. The revenue profile is much lower. The ability to put passengers on seats is much, much harder. And we're just hoping that it will keep getting better.
Beyond the funds, is innovation going to help airlines negotiate this dark corner?
This is an industry that is bleeding even before COVID. Bleeding, that needed a lot of support. And after 7-8 months of COVID, to come with 4 billion naira, and I converted it is $8 million. $8 million, is that enough for one airline to survive? All our staff are dying of hunger. Their rents are due. They can't live in houses anymore. The airlines alone have suffered about 360 billion. So what is 4 billion to 360 billion?
On another hand, the bailout is said to be raising dust as airline operators are at loggerheads over modalities for sharing the 4 billion naira bailout fund approved by the federal government. Industry sources say there is a grand plan to exclude state-backed airlines like Aero, Arik, and Ibom Air from the bailout. The African Airline Association estimates that traffic volumes will not return to pre-COVID levels until 2022, predicting a 40% recovery in Q3 and 70% in Q4 of this year.
The COVID-19 pandemic has plummeted Nigeria's aviation industry, but the impact of its devastating effect will take a long time and resources to erase. A sector that before now was merely floating got hit by a ravaging pandemic, which has left not just airlines hemorrhaging, but airports also struggling for survival. The Muritala Mohammed Airport 2 in Lagos receives passengers, and the COVID-19 protocols are still in place.
The post-COVID era of operations has been quite challenging, but through the collaboration with the airlines, the regulators, and other stakeholders in the aviation industries, we will be able to put together processes and procedures that will give the customer confidence in the safety protocol for their traveling through the terminal.
The local terminal, run by the airport authority, is not left out of business, as Arik, Airpeace, and some others conduct their operations from here. Passengers say they have built confidence to face traveling in an enclosed space at this time.
I think precautionary measures have been put in place by the authorities of FAN. It is even smoother now to travel. The usual choking environment of non-traveling persons within the airport has reduced. And I'm happy that they've been able to do what some of us expected initially to be done. COVID-19 has helped to reduce the number of persons within the airport vicinity so that you know the real travelers that are traveling for the purpose of traveling.
Oh, it's very, very wonderful. In fact, they stuck to the regulations and everything. they are there to it. I enjoyed it. And I can observe that the safety, of the people and everything, the precaution, they took necessary precaution. Even when I was coming from Abuja, it was so wonderful. I enjoyed it, really.
New airline connections at this time is also making life simpler for travelers.
I think the safety and precautionary measures that have been taken so far, in the airports, nationwide and everywhere, it's quite encouraging. You could see that the government, and basically not just the government, the individuals themselves are doing all that they can to ensure that they don't get the pandemic, encouraging other people to wipe their hands, use sanitizers and all of that. So the awareness is being created and it's good.
I think it's a very pleasant relief to Southeast and South-South. Having Port Harcourt, Uyo, Calabar, Owerri, and Asaba. Enugu coming up, it's going to be a very pleasing experience and an easy flow of movement to the Southeast and South-South. So it's a very welcome development.
Despite the pandemic, the airport authorities said it's ensuring service delivery to passengers and all stakeholders.
What do we want to make out of aviation? The minister said national carrier. That shows that government is interested in the business. But beyond national carrier, we need to look at aviation infrastructure airports. We need to look at handling. We need to look at fueling. We need to look at maintenance. We need to look at catering. We need to look at manpower. There's just so much to consider. So when we put it all in perspective, we define what exactly is it that we want, then we're sure where we're going. Airlines have different problems, different airlines with their different situations. I know there are salary issues. There are maintenance programs that they ought to have put in place while the airlines are grounded because of COVID. There are so many other things. So it's going to be on a priority basis. And when I look at the 4 billion, I keep asking myself, what exactly will this 4 billion do? And for how many airlines? And what will be the sharing formula for all of this? And when you look at it, some operate, I think the largest fleet currently in the country is Air Peace. How much would he get out of this money? How much will Overland get out of this money? How much would ASMA get? How much would so many other people get? So it comes to the operators need to sit down with the minister and probably with the Ministry of Finance people and work a modality out, which I think they must have done by now. But when you put it in perspective, 4 billion are for what exactly? Maybe to clear staff salaries, arrears, maybe. Innovation will help, but it's not going to come easy and it's not going to come cheap. And when you say innovation will help, again, let's look at our peculiar situation here. Airports make money when passengers pass through, when airlines fly. Airlines make money when passengers fly. If you look at our domestic operation, I think almost every domestic operator had cut capacity by there about 90–95%. Ordinarily, I recall some operators will do 80, 100 flights a day. They're barely doing 20. So that's where we are. The innovations that I think airlines could bring to place cannot be in isolation. It still comes back to the fact that operating environment, the peculiar challenges, the policies, the framework, and the rest of it. One thing that I think airlines may be saving money on, which is not anything significant with COVID, is catering. How do we see aviation in Nigeria? Our government needs to first define what would aviation do for the economy of this country. We have to start from that point of view. Is it an enabler? If you want to call aviation an enabler, that's what Dubai did. Dubai made aviation an enabler of the economy. And you can see the impact of Emirates on Dubai as a nation. So we need to be very decisive in how we define aviation for our country. Other than that, we would have, when we do that, we have laid the foundation, a proper foundation for what aviation is.
Welcome back. As part of efforts to maintain safety in the aviation industry, effective safety management systems must be in place. That's our first story on Newsflash.
Who delivered the first paper Issues of aviation safety is brought to the front burner as the Accident Investigation Bureau holds the 2020 Nigerian Aviation Workshop Symposium. The commissioner in charge of the bureau harps on the need for effective safety management systems.
The framework for the implementation and maintenance of SMS in line with the Annex 19 to the Convention on International Civil Aviation and Safety Management Manual, document 9859. They have 4 components. 1, safety policy and objectives, risk management, safety assurance, safety promotions, and also safety promotions.
A director in the Ministry of Aviation highlights the essence of the symposium aimed at ensuring safety in the skies.
The AIV being the body with the statutory responsibility to investigate occurrences had investigated these accidents and had issued safety recommendations where necessary. It may most likely be from this point of view that the Bureau had decided to organize this symposium to explore the implementation of safety management systems as one of the ways of preventing accidents and serious incidents in the Nigerian airspace.
For the Director of Operations at the Nigeria Airspace Management Agency, defining roles for agencies and stakeholders during aircraft accidents is of paramount importance.
There are so many agencies that are involved in accident investigations or in accident management or emergency responses. And so there is a need to clearly define the role of each of these agencies. You can't help it when an accident occurs. There are so many interest groups.
Although participants at the symposium are expected to brainstorm on the importance of an integrated and harmonized safety management solution, among other subjects, safety management system, which refers to a set of processes and tools that are adopted to formally manage a structured safety program, forms the crux of this year's symposium.
The National Association of Aircraft Pilots and Engineers, NAPI, has written to Azman Air's management over the sack of 6 of its members who allegedly complained of delay in payment of salaries. NAPI says it has also given a 7-day ultimatum to reverse the action. The association added that it has written to the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority and the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, over the issue. NAPE President Abednego Galadima said pilots were made to sign Memoranda of Understanding, making it difficult for a pilot to leave an employer and be employed by other members of the airline operators of Nigeria. Meanwhile, the managing director of Azman Air, Faisal Abdulmunaf, said the sack was inevitable due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the aviation industry. For some time now, aviation sector operators and industry experts have expressed the need for a more robust and highly effective operating environment. And to bring about this, the laws establishing various agencies in the aviation industry are being reviewed. The House of Representatives is set to hold a public hearing from Friday, October the 20th. One of the key reasons for repealing and enacting bills in the aviation industry is to ensure that the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority is the sole regulator in the industry as demanded by the International Civil Aviation Organization ICAO and other international bodies. In all, the hope is that all the clauses proving to be a clog in the wheel of progress of the industry are removed and new ideas infused properly with the right legislative backing to ensure the bills, when passed, will continually improve the aviation industry. The European Union says it will impose tariffs on imports of $4 billion worth of goods from the United States, while hoping that the country's president-elect, Joe Biden, will foster a sharp improvement in transatlantic ties.
Regrettably, in spite of our best efforts, due to the lack of progress from US side, we can confirm that European Union will later today exercise our rights and impose the countermeasures awarded to us by the WTO in respect of Boeing.
The bloc announced it would exercise the right to counter measures awarded to it last month, by the World Trade Organization in a case against the U.S. plane maker Boeing as part of a long-running U.S.-EU battle over civil aviation subsidies.
So we call on the US to agree that both sides drop existing countermeasures with immediate effect so that we can quickly put this issue behind us.
I hope you're excited like I am, and I can't wait to see you on board.
Qantas pilot Captain David Samogreen welcomes passengers who are eager for the flights to nowhere experience.
Oh, it's very upsetting for us because we love travelling and so on, and as soon as we saw this one here, Jason and I thought we've got to go on this one here and really have a great time and enjoy the time away, and it's a lovely experience to go.
I've been there before, but just looking up, down from above, I think would be really fascinating. Yeah.
It's been a very challenging year, and when flying's in your blood, I think we're all really struggling, and certainly to our colleagues in Melbourne even more so. So to have the privilege to do this and get back in the air and share that experience and transcend boundaries is really special.
The flight jetted off and returned to Sydney, taking 150 travellers on a full-day sightseeing trip over some of Australia's most iconic landmarks. Dubbed the Great Southern Land Scenic Flight, the Qantas 787 Dreamliner, typically used for long-haul international journeys, flew at low levels over landmarks including Uluru, the Great Barrier Reef and the Sydney Harbour. The airline said the journey sold out in 10 minutes, with tickets costing between $575 to $2,765 US, depending on the seating class. Passengers on board the Qantas flight to nowhere praised the unique full-day sightseeing trip.
Look, it was spectacular. I thought that some of the sights that we saw today, one would never get the chance to see it quite like that. I felt that I was so close to a lot of them, and it was just brilliant.
And I've flown to Cairns so many times for work and different things, but today's the first time I've actually looked at some of those islands and those reefs and just gone, oh my God, I have to come back. I have to come back.
We just can't wait to get airborne again and take more people to these destinations. Hopefully we've planted some seeds in terms of people's next holiday plans. We want more of these flights. Can't wait to get airborne again.
Qantas posted a net loss of $1.41 billion for the last financial year ending June 30, with most commercial routes grounded and international travel curbed by the coronavirus pandemic. The Scenic flight concept is aimed to help boost the ailing airline sector.
Qantas 1211 taxi to and hold short of runway 27 right via taxiway.
The flight has not been without criticisms, though. Environmental activist Cam Walker said although the airline sector has suffered terribly through the pandemic, joy flights were not going to turn the industry around.
The flights to nowhere are really hard to justify. We understand that people need to travel, for life, for family, for work, for romance, for holidays. But flights to nowhere, they really seem a bit selfish, they really seem a bit pointless, and they really seem to add a lot of carbon load to the atmosphere for really no benefit.
Qantas said that it would pay to offset the carbon emissions of the sightseeing flight. The concept of scenic flights is not new. Antarctica Flight has chartered Qantas jets for scenic flights over Antarctica for 26 years.
That's all we have for you on the program. See you next week, God's willing. I'm Bukola Jo Oketumbi.